Hi guys, Jenny here, Lipgloss and Aftershave Virtual Skincare Festival. It's 5 o'clock. Hello, Michael Pugliese and Circadia. We have another Circadia with us. Before we get started, because we want to get going as quick as possible because we know Circadia has a ton of information. Barry's got a few housekeeping items that we need to take care of real quick.
Hey everyone, happy 5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock on the East Coast. Airport rules apply even if you're not on the East Coast, so drink them if you got them. Comments go in the chat and questions go in the Q&A box. Make sure we get that. Make sure you tune in on April 10th at 2 o'clock. Register for Sell From Your Sofa. Everybody's doing drop ship, but we want to teach all the estheticians out there how to use digital to sell these dropship products. We have a full hour on how to use blogs, email, Instagram, and Facebook to sell all that amazing dropship product and devices that are out there. Then on 4/22, April 22nd, we are going to have, hey, Michael shared his screen. On April 22nd, we're gonna have the Earth Day Skincare Festival, How to Grow in the Comeback. So we'll have Carol Phillips, Lori Crete, Taz Jamal, Caitlin Durning, Julie Penke, Maxine Drake, and Darcy Debonarde on how to grow your business in the comeback, a strategic way to plan and execute reopening after we've been closed for so long. So you'll need to register for that. You can register for both of those at lipglossandaftershave.com. And then as always, we have the replay on the app. Just download it from the App Store or Google Play, and you just tap education and you're good to go. With that, we've got Michael Pugliese from Circadia talking about rosacea. Michael.
Yes. Awesome. Well, hello everyone. Thank you, Barry and Jenny, for having me back again. This has been incredible. I've had a chance to watch a lot of the other presentations from the previous session, and they're great. So really exciting information. I can't wait to see some of the ones from today that I missed. Today we're going to be talking about rosacea, understanding the mystery, and I'm really excited to present this topic. Another subject that I've really gotten a real true appreciation for, just reading about it and seeing other lecturers present about it over the years and watching it evolve as far as the understanding goes. And there are a lot of really true misunderstandings about it. So we're going to kind of dig into that and see what it is exactly that we know. And I'm going to present to you what it is that my understanding of the condition is, and kind of wade through it, because the reality is that no one really knows exactly what it is and exactly why it's happening, but certainly the understanding has started to crystallize much more significantly in the last probably 3 to 5 years or so. And I'm going to share with you some published data on that, and give you some suggestions for some treatment options as well. But I have to say, Barry, really excited for some of those great marketing experts, a lot of who I've had the opportunity to work with and sit through some of their educational sessions. So that's going to be really good. So excited to tune into that's coming up. So again, understanding rosacea. Really, let's talk a little bit about the current definition. If you research rosacea, if you're the average consumer or even a professional esthetician and you're just trying to figure out what it is that's out there as far as public knowledge and information, well, we do know that it's definitely a chronic inflammatory condition of the skin. It's diffused or characterized mainly by diffused redness. It's usually in a symmetrical pattern that we find across the face, and it almost always primarily affects the face. It can be on other parts of the body as well, but almost always on the face. We see the different classifications as far as the subtypes, which we're going to review, but the diffused redness and sometimes characterized by papules and pustules, which we'll look at. And in the advanced stages, we oftentimes see thickening of the skin, and there's some others that we'll take a look at that can be really severe advanced conditions. But you can also see, which we call phymatous rosacea or rhinophyma. I'll show you some clinical pictures of that, which is where we start to see the buildup of really thick tissue underneath the surface of the skin. And we'll talk about why this is happening, or really why we think this is happening, when we get into the examination of that. Here's some general statistics on rosacea, exactly who gets it. And this is information that's readily available. I know some of the other presenters have talked a little bit about that, and I'm remiss that I'm not mentioning that April is National Rosacea Awareness Month. So we're presenting this information at a very timely time of the year because we want people to understand it and to become more aware of it. Because it does affect so many people, actually about 16 million more actually people in the world. It actually affects women more than it does men, but there's a much higher level of severity of the condition in men, primarily because of the involvement of the sebaceous follicle. And we'll talk about some of the mites and some of the bacteria that have been known to be associated with that, and how sebaceous activity and even hormones play that role. We usually see the peak activity after 30 years of age, and it is a progressive condition, so it'll have a tendency to get worse and worse and more advanced with age. And of course, with women, we typically start to see more cases with menopause. These are some of the clinical features. I mentioned a couple of these already. It is, again, characterized by diffuse redness, typically across the cheek, the forehead. You'll typically see it on the nose as well. When you start to see the phymatous formation, it's the nose, the cheek, the forehead, typically the chin. As I mentioned, it can oftentimes on the body when it forms, it'll form on the chest, sometimes on the back as well, but typically you're going to see it oftentimes mostly just on the face. What's really interesting about it is that there's this idea that we call it acne rosacea in the industry, and it's because we see these notable papules and pustules in a more advanced condition, and that's classified as subtype 2. And like I said, I'll get to those subtype classifications here in just a moment. But when we look at these papules and pustules, they do look like acne, but they're not true acne in the senses that we have a high level of P. acne bacteria and an overactive sebaceous gland that's typically triggered by more androgenic components. Yes, there is some of that at play here, but what you'll almost always notably find is a marked absence of blackheads. You don't typically see that. You'll see the material that's inside the follicle that you might see after extracting whitehead comedones, but you won't actually see the blackheads, which is interesting. And a lot of that has to do with the overall vascular etiology in general of rosacea, but we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into it. So when you look at the classifications of rosacea, and there have been some updates rather on some of the phenotypes that you see with rosacea. But if you look at the primary distinctions from the different classes, there's 4 actual subtypes. So subtype 1 is erythema telangiectatic rosacea. And if you ask a dermatologist, they'll say, well, telangiectasia is not necessarily rosacea. Telangiectasia, oftentimes in the world of dermatology, is defined as distended capillaries, or capillaries that have completely lost their elasticity. They've enlarged to such a degree that they're no longer able to shrink themselves back down, and then we can actually see them through the surface of the skin. Keep in mind that the vascular etiology, the blood vessels that you're actually seeing when you see that telangiectasia type of skin, you're seeing that blood vessel all the way through the epidermis, because the blood vessels are all in the dermal tissue. So when they lose their elasticity, we're actually seeing that distension, that expansion of the blood vessel all the way through the epidermis and into the dermal tissue. So in the world of dermatology, that's not really considered to be a condition of rosacea, but this is a statistic, a classification that comes to us from the National Rosacea Society. So we're actually going off of those classifications today. Subtype 2 is typically what we as estheticians and most of the population would look at and what we would consider rosacea. But within that subtype, you can have many, many different variations of the condition, from very mild all the way up to severe. So you can have some mild diffuse redness and mild papules and pustules all the way up to very severe. And I'll show you some clinical images of what you may be seeing in your practice or what you may be coming across in your career. Again, I always like to note that if you're looking, even if you're coming to a class at an event or coming to visit a manufacturer, you may be sitting in a classroom with students that are there that have been in the aesthetic practice for more than 20 years, but you may also be sitting with a group of esthetician students. So very much like we have a webinar today here, we may have veterans that have been in the industry for a long time, but we also may have people that are just getting into the industry. So, you may be just getting into it and starting to see some of this for the first time. Okay, subtype 3, again, is that phymatous rosacea or rhinophyma. And again, you would probably recognize it or note it the most, it's publicized the most when you see the enlargement of the nose. And we'll talk about exactly how that happens, but it really is a buildup of tissue, and it actually becomes scar tissue, and it can become very uneven in texture, but it can also happen to the cheek area and the forehead and the chin, areas where you're going to see the highest level of sebaceous activity, and there's a reason for that. And we'll talk about the potential causes and what we think may be causing that and how that plays a role. Subtype 4 is classified as ocular rosacea, and it's where you have eye irritation. We as estheticians can't actually treat that. That has to be referred to an ophthalmologist, has to be taken care of by a physician. There are some specific treatments for that, but there's something that has been recognized as causing that specifically. I mentioned already the mite. There's a very specific mite called demodex. In fact, even more specifically, demodex follicularum, and we're going to take a pretty close look at that guy. And we'll also talk about something else related to that bacteria. But those are the 4 classifications. So let's actually take a look and dig into a little bit of what I mentioned. So again, when you're looking at subtype 1, erythema telangiectatic rosacea, or just more specifically telangiectasia, if you're looking at a textbook, sometimes it can be referred to as Couperose skin. Those terms are actually used oftentimes quite interchangeably, and they do oftentimes mean the same thing. But what you're looking at there is a dilated capillary. You're looking at dilated blood vessels, and again, they've lost their ability to shrink back down. So you can topically use certain ingredients. There was a number of vasoconstrictors. We had some really good ones that were available back in the day that you can apply, and you could actually start to see the blood vessel shrink back down. Lasering, there are certain lasers that have been on the market for quite some time that you can kind of zap some of those blood vessels, and you can kind of eliminate them, and those are actually very effective treatments. But this is somewhat difficult to treat because it's not a diffusion of redness. It really doesn't have to do with specifically an inflammatory response, more so a chronic inflammatory response, not necessarily an immediate inflammatory response. But this is defined as erythema telangiectatic rosacea, or subtype 1. Subtype 2, which again is the papulopustular rosacea, this is what we more think of as a specific rosacea condition. Now, what you're looking at is a relatively mild case. Again, you can see the diffused redness, but you can also see the beginning of those really little mild papules and pustules. They're relatively mild. This would be a case that we could probably get under control in a relatively short period of time. I want to make note again that even though we call it acne rosacea, some of it may actually look like acne lesions. One of the things to avoid, and we'll get more specific into this when we talk about treatment options, is extraction. I see oftentimes recommendations to extract lesions that are associated with rosacea, and you shouldn't do that, because if you're doing extractions, what you'll find is that there's very little P. acne bacteria. There's very little P. acne bacteria that you're going to find inside a papulopustular lesion that is actual clinical rosacea. Acne, of course, there's plenty, but not so much with clinical rosacea. This is a little bit more of a moderate case. Again, you still have the papules and pustules, but you can see the lesions themselves are a little bit more inflammatory. This one is a little bit more severe. So again, the diffusion of redness is there, but now you have what is looking like much more of a pustule, papule-like situation going on there that actually looks like acne. But again, if you were to extract, don't extract, but if you were to extract what's inside the follicle there, you would find very, very little P. acne bacterial content. And again, you see, even though it looks like active acne, a marked absence of blackheads, a marked absence of open comedones. This is subtype 3. So this is the beginning stages of phymatous rosacea, and you can already see this kind of uneven texture, this uneven buildup of material, which is actually protein. So what's actually happening here is you have this chronic inflammatory condition, and what it's doing is we're going to kind of fast forward the concept here a little bit and know that when you affect the surface of the skin, when you're creating a trauma, even if you're creating this kind of a little bit of surface pressure, the cells underneath the surface of the skin, in particular the fibroblasts, they are sensitive to messages from the rest of the skin. So even the epidermis is capable of sending messages to the fibroblast cell telling it to do certain things. And in fact, when we put that kind of pressure, just even surface pressure, even certain massage techniques can actually influence the behavior of the fibroblast cell. There's little messengers on the outside of the fibroblast called integrins, and they can sense that kind of directional pressure. So just by putting surface pressure onto the surface of the skin, those integrins will then tell the fibroblast that it's being compressed and to build up more collagen, more connective tissue, collagen, elastin, things like that. So that's why we recommend compression massage with a lot of our facial massaging techniques. I'm not supposed to be massaging my face, but I can't help it. Don't worry, I washed my hands and sanitized before this. But what's actually happening here with this vascular inflammatory condition is that it's triggering the fibroblast to produce those connective tissues as well. But the fibroblast cell in the skin recognizes that it's actually creating too much connective protein. So to counterbalance, it'll start to produce the collagenases and the elastases that will break that connective tissue down. So what you end up having is this irregular buildup and breakdown of connective tissue. And that's what gives this uneven buildup in texture. It's the chronic inflammation that's occurring. And again, we're going to get a little bit deeper into exactly why that may be occurring. No one knows exactly for sure, but we have some really good ideas as to why that could be happening. But this is what the ultimate end result looks like, right? We don't know exactly why it's happening, but this is what the result looks like. So again, one of our treatment options is going to be to help to control the inflammation. So this is early stages of the scarring. As it advances, this is something that's going to be much more severe. Now, most of your clients won't advance to this stage. They're going to have, again, the diffuse redness, and they won't get this, but this is that hypertrophic scarring that could potentially begin to develop. And again, it doesn't have to progress to this level. This is 100% preventable at this point, but it is something that can happen. Once it gets to this level, of course, there's nothing that we can do. This is surgery is really the only thing that can get rid of this, but certainly a much more preventative measure. And this is probably the most severe case that has ever been documented. And you can see this poor gentleman has such an incredible buildup of this connective tissue and such a severe rhinophyma that there's nothing but these very, very aggressive procedures. They're actually referred to oftentimes as wiring, where they're carving away, excuse me, all this connective tissue, and then they have to re-epithelialize the tissue. So the sooner we can get to this type of condition to control the inflammation, to get rid of some of what could be causing it, the better off we are. This is subtype 4, which is ocular rosacea. Now I'm going to kind of jump and fast forward just a little bit. When we look at ocular rosacea, we have a pretty close association with, again, the demodex mite, Demodex follicularum. Excuse me. And some would even say that it is associated with migration of the demodex mite into the eye. But again, as I mentioned, we as estheticians, there's nothing that we can do to help to treat this. This is something that has to be addressed by a physician. Excuse me, it's water down the wrong pipe. Okay, let's talk about the histology of rosacea, or the histopathology of rosacea. When we look at a skin section of someone who has, again, clinical rosacea, I want to call your attention to this particular slide. Now, this is a skin section, a section that has been taken and then dyed with a particular type of dye to allow us to look at an area of the skin, and it's this particular part that we're looking at. This is called a granuloma, and granulomas typically form when you have a collection of immune cells coming to an area to fight an infection. So immune cells like leukocytes, neutrophils, basophils, eosinophiles, they're all there to help to protect local immunity in the skin. But when you look at rosacea, well, the question is, well, why? What are they doing there? What are they coming to wall off or get rid of? They're there to help to protect against foreign invaders, but specifically, what type of foreign invaders are we looking at? So that question started a lot of researchers many years ago on a quest to look at what could possibly be creating this or helping to cause this. When you actually start to look at, excuse me, underneath the surface of the skin, what is actually there, that inflammation is then, again, as I mentioned, what will start to trigger the buildup of that a regular protein, things like collagen in particular, and also elastin as well. The buildup and the breakdown of those irregular materials. So again, even though the pathology of rosacea is not understood, there's a lot of different theories that are helping to connect the dots. So we'll start to take a look at those. What we definitely know is there's a lot of environmental triggers, certainly some genetic factors. When we look at who actually has it, most people can say in their family, at least 40% of people will say someone in their family has it. A lot of Eastern European, English, Irish, Welsh, Scandinavian people of those descents will have it. Very fair-skinned individuals, Fitzpatrick types 1s and 2s, when you start looking at phenotype classifications, that's really what we're taking a look at. We can have darker Fitzpatrick types that will oftentimes have rosacea, but usually when we look at the genetic lineage, again, you're going to start to see some of the Eastern European descent. So we certainly know that there's genetic factors at play there, but the environmental triggers and aggravators are something that are also examined. And the question becomes why. And we look at sometimes a chicken or the egg scenario. Are these genetic predispositions creating environments that are more prone to some of these causalities or some of these factors, or are people with this history, this background, are they just individuals that end up having rosacea? And no one really has the 100% answer. But like I said, we're going to get into a little bit of taking a look at what could possibly be coming first. Of course, there's the vascular etiology, the redness, and some of the other inflammatory factors that we're talking about. So we're going to take a little bit deeper of a look into the mites. I have some really interesting information to share with you, and not just the mites per se, but the bacteria that are part of the mite and the mite's life cycle, because that is also a very interesting story. And also fungus. Fungus does also play a role in rosacea. As I mentioned, about 40% of individuals can report back and say that someone in their family also has rosacea. Again, 30% are of Irish, English, Welsh, Scottish, or some type of Scandinavian descent. Some of the big environmental triggers include things like ultraviolet radiation. We're going to come back to that because there's a lot more research. I just kind of did an overview, a look back at some of the things that I hadn't seen in a while. And there's even more research to support ultraviolet exposure and ultraviolet radiation being one of the major triggers, one of the major aggravators to contributing to rosacea. So we're going to come back to that. Just even one more thing that helps us to understand the importance of using an SPF. I say this all the time. If there was a book, a how to be an esthetician book, recommending a good SPF would be on page 1. But as we know, heat, specifically cold, any kind of chemical irritation, any kind of spicy foods, strong detergents, those are triggers for so many people that already have it. Heat is kind of a precipitant of it, but not the heat specifically, but even tea, even cold sometimes can actually aggravate rosacea for people. Which brings us to demodex follicularum. So I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with the concept, familiar with the theory. Those of you that are not, demodex follicularum is a very common skin mite, and this started showing up in the research as early as the 80s, but even got a lot of attention in the early 90s. And what you're seeing here are 3 separate images. You have females that kind of live in the follicle. The males have a tendency to crawl around on the skin looking for the females, but they only have a life cycle of a period of a few weeks, and they're crawling around feeding on dead keratin and sebum. And the research, the early research that came out in the 90s, showed that people with rosacea had an unusually high population of these mites. And there was never a really direct correlation made, but one of the reasons why this came about is that there was a group of researchers trying to link male pattern baldness to demodex follicularum. And one of the reasons was that there's a cousin of demodex follicularum called demodex brevis. Demodex brevis is known to cause mange in dogs. So the idea is that if demodex brevis causes mange in dogs, then demodex follicularum may be causing male pattern baldness. And there was actually a company that was coming out with a treatment shampoo, and they thought that, okay, this is going to work. But during that time, of the research and the discovery phase, they found that people with rosacea had a lot of these mites as well. And in fact, you can see a lot of the treatment options that are available for skincare products will have some of the same essential oils that are designed to control demodex brevis. In fact, at Circadia, we have a blend of essential oils that have actually been shown to asphyxiate the demodex mite. And I'm going to give you a place to go where you can actually see this. You can actually see it on YouTube, which is really interesting and really fun. But yes, they're nasty little buggers. All of us have them. It's a very common skin mite. There's quite a few of them, but it's people that have the rosacea have an unusually high population. Now, the really interesting link between all of this is that it's not necessarily the mite, but the bacteria that lives on the mite. And this is research that was published in, started to show up in about 2001, still in the literature as recent as 2019, but it's B. ohloroneus, and I'm going to have a spelling for you, called Bacillus ohloroneus. And this is the bacteria that lives on the mite and is part of the mite's digestion. Now, one of the issues with the mite, of course, is that it only has a life cycle of a few weeks, and once it dies, it explodes. It never actually digests anything that it eats completely. It's feeding on dead keratin and sebum, but it doesn't defecate. Once it dies, it just explodes, and everything that's inside of it ends up on your skin or inside the follicle. So the bacteria is there, and it's theorized that this bacteria is what's helping to trigger this inflammatory response. And if you go back to the slide that I showed you of the follicle and all those immune cells, the theory is that this is helping to create this scenario where we have all these immune cells coming to fight this area. Now, the question, of course, is why isn't this happening to everyone? We think it's some type of genetic predisposition that people have to this particular bacteria. There is no real answer yet. There's still research being done, and people are asking a lot of questions. Is it the bacteria? Is there the microbiome bacteria? Is it related to digestion? There's a lot of signs that say that these are all interlinking concepts and interlinking ideas, but no one has 100% certainty just yet. But what we do know is that if we can control the demodex population on the surface of the skin, if we can control the bacterial content, if we can reduce the inflammatory response, we start to see a reduction in not just visible redness, but also the inflammation, in the swelling that we oftentimes see with rosacea, and certainly with the presence of papules and pustules. So rosacea is one of those conditions that we have to treat what we're seeing. We're actually treating and addressing the symptoms. We're treating the redness, the inflammation, we're treating the pain that's associated with rosacea, we're treating the swelling with our topical application products. So that's really what we're going after. And again, this is an actual living demodex. Now, where I'm going to direct you is to YouTube. So you can actually go see Death of a Demodex. And I just checked it again, and the original video was not there. And I'm just going to share a little bit of a story with you, because my grandfather, Dr. Pugliese, has been doing research on skin since the 60s. In fact, he joined the Society of Cosmetic Chemists in 1971, for those of you that don't know the story, and has been developing skincare products ever since. But I distinctly remember when I was a teenager, actually an early teenager, coming home to his lab because I would do some work after school, and seeing him and some other researchers doing extraction. Right? They were actually putting adhesive on the end of glass rods, and they were extracting out of the follicles and putting them on the slide. So I was asking him a couple days later what they were doing, and he showed me. He showed me underneath his microscope, electron microscope, and there were these little bugs crawling around. And I thought, what is that? He goes, these are bugs that are on your skin. And I remember being just absolutely repulsed by the idea that there were bugs on your skin. And this is, I mean, I couldn't have been more than like maybe 12 or 13 years old at the time. But I remember that he was actually working on things that could potentially kill them, and they were putting them in solutions of formaldehyde and things like that, and they were surviving for very long periods of time. So years later, when I was getting ready to join Circadia, I remember him talking about what they eventually found was these blends of essential oil that also have been shown to kill the other cousins of this particular mite that I had seen that many years ago. But you can go to YouTube and search Death of a Demodex, and you can actually see the demodex mites. And after, I think it's maybe 2 or 3 minutes, they actually dissipate and start to just kind of dissolve and fall apart. And when that happens, you can see what's inside them, which is, again, it's the digestive material, but also a lot of that bacteria just kind of opens up. And again, you're probably thinking about, okay, if all these mites are on my face, this is actually happening on my face. And yes, it is. It's not a very pleasant thought, but it is definitely something that's happening. But very interesting, and certainly something that you should all take a look at. I mentioned the bacteria. It is so like P. acnes. This is Bacillus oleronius or B. oleronius. There was a number of research groups that were did the observation and said, hey, we think it's more so the bacteria, because they created what's called a protein serum, not necessarily, definitely not a skincare serum, but they created a serum from the bacteria. And when it was applied to patients who had rosacea, they had an immediate inflammatory response. And people without clinical rosacea didn't tend to have any response whatsoever. So 100% there is a link between the bacteria and people who have rosacea. This is the condition mange that we talked about. And you can see here, it's highly irritating, but this is the cousin of demodex follicularum that causes the mange in the dogs. And that's traditionally known as demodex brevis. So the inflammatory reaction that we see certainly could be the bacteria response. There's also an autoimmune element that's at work here. The antigen is the foreign body, so that's causing those cells, all those immune cells, to come to that area to help to fight whatever those invaders may be. And the inflammation can be caused by a number of the different factors, and of course the sun is one that we talked about. But all those other triggers are things that could potentially be leading and contributing to the severity of the cases that you're seeing. So now that we have a little bit more of an understanding, at least a little bit of an understanding, how can we actually treat it? One of the things that we haven't talked about, again, we're treating the actual symptoms. We're treating what we're seeing, because there's no there's no cure. There's no magic bullet. There's no one thing that's actually going to address it. And your treatment options are going to vary from person to person. That's one thing that I talk about and I stress a lot, especially with things that we know are relatively chronic conditions and things that are persistent. Rosacea certainly falls into that category. I mentioned it on one of the other webinars that we did recently. Pigmentation certainly is another one. So you have to be consistent with the treatment options, and sometimes you have to pivot a little bit and try something a little bit different. So just be patient and ask that your clients be patient as well. So these are a couple of things to keep in mind. Certainly helping to control the inflammation. If you're helping to control inflammation, it will help to control swelling, the edema that you oftentimes see, and help to also restore barrier function. Helping to restore barrier function is something that's important. Maintaining a healthy barrier with good essential fatty acid content, good hydration is something that's incredibly important. A lot of that has to do with simple dietary intake. So making sure your clients are have good diet, avoiding the things that they know that they're supposed to avoid, too much alcohol, making sure they're drinking enough water. I know that the too much alcohol consumption has been a challenge for a lot of people. I'm following a lot of people on Facebook right now, and with everybody being home, there's not a whole lot to do, but alcohol consumption is something that is a big trigger for people with rosacea. But with all this extra time on our hands, a lot of people are doing that. So I encourage you to keep up with your education and keep the mind sharp. Reducing production of demodex mite. Again, we do have things that we know will help to control the population, but also helping to control the population of the bacteria. And this particular bacteria is also susceptible to oxygen, and we'll talk about that. Any sources of local irritation, like I said, soaps, any cleansers, alcohol, any tinctures or acidic astringents, any kind of abrasives, any strong peeling agents, all those things that you may see in your cosmetic products. You want to avoid those as best as possible. I'm not saying don't exfoliate at all. There are some exfoliants that would be more appropriate. And in fact, you'll find that as the redness and the swelling starts to dissipate, oftentimes, you can actually start to see the skin peel and flake a little bit. And I've noticed that with some of the clients that we've worked with, that as the condition improves and you start to see some of the redness go away, if you touch a client's skin with rosacea, it can oftentimes have that little bit of a squishy feel to it. And that's the swelling. That's the buildup of the water sometimes that you get, the edema that you can feel. So as that starts to dissipate, you can see the skin begin to flake a little bit, and enzymes, in particular, bromelain is a really good one. I like bromelain and because it's healing. Papain is another great one. That can help to get rid of some of the flaking that you can see as that water content starts to dissipate, and as the inflammation starts to dissipate as well. Certainly use a mild cleanser. Any anti-inflammatory products will help. Mild exfoliation, as I mentioned. Oxygen, because it helps to control bacterial content, and sometimes topical use of antibiotics is required. There are some that are recommended out there, but you're going to have to see a physician for that. Just always proceed with caution. Sometimes those conditions can actually get misdiagnosed, and the last thing that you want is to end up on any kind of heavy vitamin A or retin A when it comes to treating rosacea. Azelaic acid is actually another one that I've seen work very well as a prescriptive, and that's now available, I think, as high as 9% for treatment of rosacea. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some of the cleansing options. So keep an eye on my time. I'll make sure I have enough time left over for questions at the end. At Circadia, we have a lot of products that are very appropriate for treating a condition of rosacea. Rosacea is one of those conditions where you may see the dryness, but you may also see a little bit more of an oil production. For those that have a more drier, more sensitive type of rosacea when it comes to dryness and sensitivity, the vitamin Villa makes for a great option. It's an oil-based cleanser. There's no surfactant in it whatsoever, so no foaming agents. So it does work very nicely for that. Great for removing makeup, but it's got a lot of great recovery type of ingredients. Soybean oil, cranberry oil, which is a really great one, has a lot of vitamin E, again, for barrier support and function. Has all types of vitamin E, all the tocopherols, the tocotrienols, so a lot of natural sources. So it's great for recovery. We use it a lot for a pre-cleanse in the treatment room, but it's also fantastic for home care. Also doubles very nicely as a massage oil in the treatment room. I would say the lipid replacing cleansing gel is probably the most appropriate option for those that have a little bit more of an oily type of rosacea, mainly because it has a mild surfactant. This is something called Step-N Mild. So it's a sodium lauryl sulfate alternative. It's a blend that isn't going to be overly stripping. Now, again, sometimes if you have a drier type of rosacea, surfactants, foaming agents, they're designed to emulsify oil. So you need to be a little bit more cautious with those type of conditions and making sure that you're not dissolving too much oil. But this is kind of that middle of the road, making sure that you're emulsifying the oil that's building up, but it's not stripping away too much. And that's where the name lipid replacing cleansing gel comes from. But again, it has a little bit of a lantoin in there, so it's helping to restore some of what we've taken away. The next couple of products that we'll talk about, the Aloe and Calendula Calming Mist. This is one of my favorite products. It's great for a misting application. A lot of people look at it and say, well, this is your toner. It's not necessarily a toner because none of our products require any pH balancing, but it has some traditional anti-inflammatory ingredients. Aloe, which is great. Calendula, which is just absolutely incredible as far as a performer. Things like sea whip, a lot of other calming botanicals, chamomile, elderflower, rose extracts. So this is really a good first step after that initial cleansing option to help immediately start to calm and soothe the skin. The Chronocalm is a hyaluronic acid-based serum, and these products are designed to be layered in this application. So cleanse, mist, serum, and then moisturize. A hyaluronic acid-based serum, and it has a lot of kind of a trade anti-inflammatory ingredients. I'm going to share one of them with you and show you the actual technical ingredient file so that you can get a look at it. But it has, again, things like ginger extract, marshmallow eco extract, oat beta-glucan, which is a very powerful immune stimulant. So all things that are designed to help to control and reduce local inflammation. One of the ones that I wanted to share with you, and this is, this comes directly from the ingredient supplier, and I hope you can all see that. Barry or Jenny, can we just get a confirmation that everybody can see the file that I have up on the screen? Telangian?
Yes, sir. We can see it.
Okay. So this is a peptide that comes from a company called Lipotech, and I do this a lot in our educational training classes. This is usually information that's saved only for the manufacturers, but This is an interesting one. It actually is, as you can see from the marketing piece, is designed to help to take the threads of redness out of the skin, but it reduces something called LL37, and I'm just kind of circling in here. This is called cathelicidin, and if you've done research on rosacea, or after this kind of encourage you or prompts you to do a little bit more research, this is a protein that you see a lot, and it's overproduced particularly in rosacea clients, and it's a precursor to other inflammatory cytokines. And cytokines are cell communication messengers. They're actually peptides that are made by one cell to communicate behaviors to other cells. And interleukin-6, IL-6, and IL-8 here, if you see me moving the cursor, those are two of the most prominent inflammatory cytokines that we see in inflammatory skin conditions, in rosacea specifically. And what this ingredient is designed to do is help to reduce the presence of LL37. So it's kind of a precursor to get rid of some of these inflammatory mediators. So really, really interesting, very unique ingredient. Yeah, so I really like that one, and that is actually in the chrono column. That's an ingredient that we utilize there. Oops, I went all the way to the beginning. There we go. The Tranquility Cream, and this is a moisturizer, and again, everything that we've discussed so far can be used daily. The Tranquility Cream is more of a thicker textured moisturizer that's designed to help to keep the skin hydrated, but also help to assist with barrier repair. And again, you see a collection of really nice, very effective, very efficient anti-inflammatories here together. Now, I'm gonna show you another one of the ingredient files, and there's an incredible synergy between the Delessence and the Phalangin. So the Phalangin is the one that I just showed you. The Delessence is a kind of a partner product that was launched at the same time. This one downregulates another called PAR2. So PAR2 is another pro-inflammatory mediator that's also seen in inflammatory skin conditions, also helps to reduce the presence, again, if you're seeing on where the cursor is, of interleukin-6 and interleukin-8. Now, some of you may be sitting there saying, oh my gosh, I have no idea what he's talking about right now. You have to be at least partially familiar with the idea of cell-to-cell communication. If you're not, that's something that you can take a look into. Maybe we'll do another class on that sometime in the future. But the cells are communicating with each other. The keratinocyte, one of my favorite educators in the industry, Florence Hill, said it best, and when she said that the keratinocyte is the gossip of the industry. It's capable of talking to other people and other cells. And it does that by releasing cytokines. So these are peptides that are made by one cell to talk to other cells. And interleukin-6 and interleukin-8 are those pro-inflammatory cytokines that are capable of doing that. But if we can reduce them, especially in these inflammatory skin conditions, it's going to have a marked benefit to the skin, to the appearance of the skin, and control it. This also helps to control and regulate pH from layer to layer, because if you think about it, at the surface of the skin, you have a pH of 3.5 to 5.5, but by the time you get to the dermal tissue, that pH has now become 7.4, somewhere in that neighborhood. So regulating pH from layer to layer, again, in these inflammatory conditions, can actually become a challenge. So this helps to maintain that pH from layer to layer. Okay, Jenny, am I supposed to be ready to take questions by about 10 of?
To be honest, Michael, Caitlin has been managing the Q&A box, so she's pretty on top of it. So I'll let you know maybe at the 50 mark. You've got, if you want 5 more minutes, we'll just check back in.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Another treatment product. So this one's really interesting. This, again, is the Rose Ease Relief Cream. So everything I've mentioned so far is designed to be used pretty much every day. The Rose Ease Relief Cream you're going to find is going to be probably best to use a couple times a week. What you have in here, again, is a blend of essential oils, and this is what has been shown to help to control demodex population. Evening Primrose is one of the ones that I would say is probably the most efficient and effective at helping to control the population of the mite, but so is rosemary. But rosemary is one of those ingredients that can be extremely anti-inflammatory, but it can be stimulating if you use it too much, especially if the skin is not in the best condition yet. So you kind of have to proceed with caution a little bit. So just a little bit first, and then you can build up the usage of that product. But those that have used this and have used it the way we recommend have had incredible success, incredible results with it, especially when they're using the regular home care products that I just mentioned. We have a concentrated version of this product called the Rosacea Serum that we use a lot in the back bar treatment room. So we can talk more about that. I haven't mentioned it yet, but our customer service team, everyone's working home from right now because of the current situation with COVID-19. But you can call our customer service team. It's 1-800-630-4710, or just email info@circadia.com. If you're watching this and you've never heard of Circadia before, or some of the things I'm presenting you've never heard before and you'd like to get a little bit more information, we're very open with our information, very open with our education, so we'd love to share. But also we have a private Facebook group, our Circadia Educational Forum, and that's a really great place to share resources, and that's really been building now because there's obviously been a huge pivot to education in the industry in the last month. Okay, the post-peel balm is another one that I love. This isn't designed to specifically be a moisturizer, but so many of our clients do because it has so many great calming, soothing, and healing ingredients, things that are designed to specifically address barrier repair, royal jelly, squalane butter, meadow foam butter. We have an ingredient in here called thermostressine, which helps to regulate certain heat shock proteins. So it's just a fantastic product for helping to reduce inflammation. I mentioned the enzymes. The cocoa enzyme has not just bromelain and papain, but also cocoa, Hershey's cocoa powder, which is really, really highly anti-inflammatory. So it makes for a great treatment option. I know most of us aren't doing a whole lot of treatments, but I know we're all excited to get back in the treatment room soon. So this really does make for a great pre-treatment for so many of the treatments that we offer here at Circadia. The Marshmallow Whip Hydrating Mask, great for hydration in general, but also marshmallow itself, very calming, very soothing. And of course, the the cocoa and the marshmallow, you put those together and right there you've got your s'mores facial. So that one's a lot of fun. We talked about the oxygen and how the bacteria don't really fare well in an oxygen-enriched environment. And we can't really say specifically that we utilize the oxygen as a germicide, but we definitely know that the P. acne bacteria don't do well with it. But we see great results for treating rosacea with the oxygen treatment, mainly because it helps to control the vascularity, gets rid of the redness. But we definitely know that the bacteria don't like the oxygen-enriched environment. So that's something that we certainly know works very well, and we've gotten some great results with that. Of course, always wear sunscreen, but even for clients with rosacea, it's especially important. As I mentioned, April is Rosacea Awareness Month, so we're running an incredible special. If you buy the Chronocalm and the Tranquility Cream, we are letting you try the Aloe and Calendula Calming Mist for free. We are still initiating our drop ship program. So if you're buying the two products, you're getting this for free, but you're also getting it drop shipped to you, and you're getting our staycation kit. So I'm just going to detail that really quickly for you. This is a special that we're running. I'm going to come back to the well here in just a moment. But the drop ship that we're doing is that you're marketing the products directly to your clients, right? So if you're a Circadia partner, you're a spa, you're marketing the products directly to your clients. You're calling them, just letting them know that this is a great program that Circadia has initiated. You're still charging them their retail price. We're shipping the product directly to your customer, but we're charging you your regular wholesale price. This isn't a kickback program. This isn't a percentage. We're still giving you your full wholesale price, right? And that's something that we want to be able to do to offer to support our partners, those that have been there to help support us. And we're doing this with some of our partners, those that are just new to Circadia. We want to make sure that the industry stays strong and as healthy as we possibly can as we're moving through this crisis together. There's some good signs that have come through in the last week or so. But it's going to be a little while till we can all get back into our practices and back to our spas and back to our offices and get back to work. So this is something that we're trying to do to stay solvent for as long as we all can. And we're drop shipping for a relatively low rate. It's an $8 drop ship. Some people are sending out just a single product and they're getting a staycation kit. But we're encouraging people to say, here, even if it's 1 or 2 or 3 products, let's get that retail product and that home care facial to them so that their skin can stay in as best possible condition as it can until they can get in to see you for their regular treatment. And it's been going incredibly well. We've gotten so much good feedback from those clients that said this has helped to keep my cash flow, even though it's not what it was. It's helped to keep my cash flow in pretty good shape until I know my clients can come back and see me. And this is the actual kit. This is what it looks like. These are the products that it comes with. It's the lipid cleanser that we talked about, the post-peel balm that I mentioned, the vitamin C, and it also comes with the sample of the marshmallow mask and the caviar lime and passion fruit enzyme mask. So it's a fantastic treatment. You can get a headband, and we've got a lot of social media engagement of people out there that have taken advantage of it, and it's been a lot of fun. So it's something that we're happy to do, and if you haven't taken advantage of it yet, we definitely encourage you to reach out to our customer service team. They are there. They have been working incredibly hard to make sure that that your clients can get this if they're interested. So with that, again, I just want to say thank you so much. Oh, I want to make sure that I mention this. We are also working with Hannah from Well CBD, making sure that she is able to get all the Well CBD products out. I have fallen in love with this brand. It is absolutely incredible. These products are amazing. I mean, they have helped me with the pain that I have, my feet, my back, my shoulders, my arms. They're just absolutely incredible. And this is what we're running, an incredible special that she's running, Hannah. If you buy any product, you can get a 1 ounce travel size, which is an $18 value, and we're drop shipping those also. So just an incredible special that she has been able to put together.
Michael, thank you so much. I loved learning from you. I was glued to the computer screen the entire time.
Thank you, Barry.
Some of those pictures, man,
some are hard to look at, aren't they?
Disturbing. But no, I loved it. I was glued to it. The rosacea, the April package that you guys are promoting.
Yes.
It's the CryoCalm and the.
I'll put that one up. Yeah. So it's 3 products. It's the ChronoCalm. If you buy the ChronoCalm and the Tranquility Cream, we're giving you the Aloe and Calendula Calming Mist. And again, we know that no one's coming to the spa right now. I mean, just about everywhere is on lockdown. So we're drop shipping. So these are obviously geared more towards the consumer, and we've made them that way. So we want to be able to get something that's enticing for the client, still engaging Rosacea Awareness Month. So we feel like this is something that they're going to want to get into their hands. It's enticing enough, and they're going to get the staycation kit.
They buy 2 products. They get 1 full-size product free and an entire kit for free as well.
Amazing.
But wait, there's more.
Wait, there's more.
There's more.
That's incredible. I feel like they're conducting an infomercial some days here, but no, it really is nice because we've had so much support from our partners, and you know, at a time like this, it does help us to put a lot of things in perspective. And you know, we've all been on a hamster wheel for as long as you can remember. We do a lot of shows and a lot of events, and one of the silver linings that I found from this is that it's given us a chance to connect with people that we don't always have the time to connect with. And that's the truth of the matter. So we've had just an outpouring of support from our clients, and, you know, we're supporting them back. So it's really been nice, and we appreciate everything that they've done for us. And this is a chance for us to show the appreciation.
So I think it's amazing, and we're going to send out an email to everyone who registered with all of the specials from this webinar. So we'll direct them to info at Circadia to place their dropship orders for that package, and we'll let everybody know what's happening with that. And we'll also we'll make sure that we include the replay. It'll go up probably. I guess we'll probably get the email out tomorrow and then the replay up at some point tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be able to let people know that you got this going on. And then Friday, we've got our webinar to show people how to use digital to get all those amazing dropship deals out to their customers. But I have to tell you, we've been really impressed with what the Circadia community has been doing on Instagram and Facebook in educating their own followers. So your account holders, your retail outlets are doing really wonderful things. And so we may use some of them as examples in the presentation on Friday the 10th.
Get your posts up, Circadia accounts. You might
we would love that. And you know, we actually, we're going to be shooting one tomorrow internally So many people have already put it out there, and again, it's exciting for us to be able to see it, that people are, you know, really embracing it as much as they can, which has been fantastic. But we're going to do one of our own to really show the step-by-step process, to make it as simple as possible, because you know, I've been on the phone, you know, in the little downtime that I do have. I mean, ironically, I can't remember the last time that I've had to work this hard. But in the little downtime that I've had, I picked up the phone to call people and say, hey, by the way, have you seen our staycation kits? Are you aware of this? I mean, this is something that you could be doing. I mean, some people are just laying down and giving up, but if they know that they can do something, it gives them a little bit of opportunity to do something. And then they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. So I think that it took a little while for people to wrap their minds around it. It's just a different way of doing something. And once they understand it, they get it a little bit more. They're willing to participate. Basically.
Absolutely.
And they get excited.
And they get excited. So yeah, so we're going to try and make it even easier than we have before.
It takes away the hopelessness, Michael. It gives them something to cling on to. It gives them something to say, like, I can try this.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it really has, and it's been incredible, because, you know, we were just trying to think of something that we could do, but now I'm just like, call everybody. If you haven't heard from them in a year, call them, because they may be sitting on the floor in their living room right now, trying to figure out, how the hell am I going to get through this? And
Absolutely.
you could be the one that helps them through it, and they'll never forget it.
Absolutely.
So, and we're finding ways to connect with people that either we haven't talked to, or maybe we've never talked to. And it's pretty amazing. And my team is, they're working hard. They're working hard. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael, so much for being with us. We appreciate you more than ever.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in and watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, be well.
To everyone watching, we appreciate you guys. We have a 6 o'clock webinar on nutrition, and at that point we're done. But you guys who watched, we appreciate you so much. Thank you.